We're now going to be looking at finishing, cooking and presenting some of the dishes that I've already prepared. So let's start with our stuffed tomatoes. You've already seen me make the mushroom duxelle, which is the stuffing that's going to fill the centre of our tomatoes. But now I want to show you how to remove the centre from the outside of the flesh of the tomato. So here's the tomato already blanched and the eye has been removed. Now using a small paring knife, I'm just going to take the top off the tomato and using the knife again, just run round the edge, which will just release the inside of the flesh from the outside. Just take your time, trying not to damage any of the tomato on the outside. Now working into a wastage bowl, just hold the tomato in your hand like so, and using a teaspoon just scoop out the centre. You can also remove the pips from the lid if you need to. Okay, so now we're going to stuff the tomatoes. Now here's one that I've already prepared. She's been hollowed out, exactly the same as I've just shown you. And here I've got some duxelle mix, which is actually chilled now. It's been put in the fridge. So using a tablespoon, I'm just going to fill these tomatoes quite generously with our stuffing. Now you want to make sure that you pack them quite tightly with the mix, because as the tomatoes cook, they will start to shrink in size a little bit, and you don't want just to have a hollow shell of tomato not with much generous stuffing in it. And you might think about serving these with perhaps some grilled fish as a garnish, or perhaps a steak, or even for breakfast. Or indeed you might just want to serve them as a side dish. Also work quite well as a vegetarian dish. So there we go, I've used all of my stuffing. I'm just going to pop their little lids on. You don't have to put the lids on, but I think it looks quite nice to serve them like that. And then I'm just going to bring in my tray, pop them into your baking tray, and they then get cooked in the oven with a tiny pinch of sea salt just onto the tomato flesh, like that. Little tiny drizzle of oil just to help the cooking process, into a 180-degree oven for about 5 or 6 minutes until they just start to brown and you can see them starting to actually cook. They may need a little bit longer, again depending on the ripeness of your tomatoes. If they were a little bit more ripe, then they'll take less time to cook. So while our tomatoes are cooking in the oven, we now want to think about rechauffing or reheating the broccoli that we've already blanched. So to do that, I need some boiling water, which I've got on the stove over here. It's been seasoned with some salt, and I'm just going to blanch the broccoli for 30 seconds just to get the heat back into it, because it's already been cooked. I'm then going to put it into a hot pan with a little bit of oil, some salt and pepper, and serve it. Okay, so I've got my broccoli here that has been reheated in the boiling water. I've added a little bit of olive oil, squeeze of lemon juice, salt and pepper, and I'm just going to serve them in my warmed serving dish. So this is enough broccoli for 2 as a side order. It's not overcooked, it's still nice and vibrant green because of course we refreshed it when we cooked it, when we blanched it. And it's not overcooked, it's not mushy, it's really nice. So just make sure that you give your bowl a wipe if needs be. And so that's our broccoli served. So let's just have a little look at our tomatoes and see how they're getting on. So they've had about 3 or 4 minutes. They're going to need another 2 to 3, I'd say. So now I'm going to get on with my apple fritters. So I'm just going to clear my pans away. Turn off all the stove because I don't need that anymore. And now to prepare my fritters, I've got an apple and a peeler. And into a wastage bowl, I'm going to peel my apple. Move that out of the way. Using a slightly larger knife, I'm just going to cut the apple in half, then into quarters. And using my knife, I'm just going to cut away the core like so. And then that quarter can go in half again. So now I'm going to bring in my batter that I made earlier, which was the flour, the sweet cider, and a little bit of sugar. Now, I want to coat these apples just very lightly in some flour, just to help the batter stick to the outside of the apple. So I've just got some plain flour here. You don't need very much. I'm just going to pop that into a bowl, drop in the apples, just shake them around in the flour, then pick them out, and I just drop them into a sieve because that's just going to, one, continue to coat the apple, but also remove all that excess. So we're now going to drop our floured apples into our batter. 2, 3. Now my oil has been preheated to about 180 degrees. Now to check if your oil is hot enough, just take a little spoon and drop a small amount of the batter into the oil. Now you can hear that sizzle. The batter immediately pops to the surface of the oil. That means the oil is at the correct temperature. So just coat the apples really well in your batter, and then just using your fingers. If I was to use the spoon at this stage, there would be too much batter into the oil. So I'm going to use my fingers, and I'm going to very carefully drop the fritters into our oil, which is preheated to 180 degrees, as I've said. When putting into oil, just lay things away from you. Don't panic. Don't sort of drop them in, because obviously it's very, very hot fat. And if anything is going to burn you severely, it's going to be hot oil. So just take your time, drop them away. If you're doing a bigger batch of these, don't overcrowd your fryer, because the more food that goes into a fryer, obviously the higher the level is going to go in the oil, and you could risk it overflowing or bubbling over, and again could severely burn you. So just be really careful when working with hot fat. So I've dropped all of those in. I'm just going to give the basket a little shake, because what happens is they sink to the bottom and they will stick to the basket. So just by giving them a shake, you'll stop that from happening. So I'm just going to clear down while they start to cook on one side, and then I'm going to turn them over once they're brown and cook the other side. Just keep your eye on them. Turn them over if you feel they need to be turned. And I'm going to check my tomatoes, which are now cooked. These have actually had about 10 minutes. But as I've said before, cooking times will vary. So just pop those on there. Check my fritters, which are looking fine. And I'm going to serve my tomatoes in this little dish here. There's one. And 2. So those are our stuffed tomatoes ready for service, and our fritters are nearly ready as well. So into a bowl, just a small amount of sugar, teaspoon or so of cinnamon, and just give it a mix. You can go as heavy with the cinnamon as you want to. Again, just check your fritters. So I'm happy that these fritters are now cooked. They're nice and golden brown. I'm just going to drop those onto a tray which has been lined with some blue roll, because that's going to absorb the excess fat from around the outside of the fritters. So just give them a little roll about on the tray. They're going to be really hot, don't forget, and just drop them straight in to your cinnamon sugar. Give them a little toss about in the sugar, making sure they're all really nicely coated. Now it's important to make sure the fat wasn't too hot at this stage, because obviously the apples were raw and we want those to cook on the inside without the outside going too brown too quickly. So again, controlling your heat is really important. So I'm going to get the ice cream, which is just vanilla flavour. And to get a nice scoop of ice cream, I've been heating my ice cream scoops just in a little bit of warm water. And I've also got just some hazelnut crumbs that I'm just going to dust onto the plate so that my ice cream has something to sit on and isn't going to roll away. So we'll just have a nice scoop of ice cream. Try to make it nice and neat. And just drop onto the plate like so. Then we'll take our fritters. That looks like a nice portion. And I've just got a little sprig of mint, which has been in some water just so that it stays nice and fresh and vibrant. And I'm going to wipe the side of my plate, because if you're serving to a customer, you want to make sure that it always looks nice. So if you've got any dribbles on the plate, just wipe those away. So there you have it. We've blanched and rechaufféed our broccoli. We've stuffed and cooked our tomatoes, and we have fried and coated our apple fritters.